Linda, could you please give the invocation?
Let's bow our heads. Holy and righteous Father, I thank you for those who are seated here tonight, for their dedication and service to our community. As they read, ponder, and speak regarding the multiple needs and issues that face our community, impart to them your wisdom, knowledge, understanding, might, revelation, and fear of the Lord. I thank you, Lord, that you make a way where there seems to be no way. And according to your word in Philippians 4:19, you are our God, and you shall supply all of our need according to your riches and glory. So we thank you that no matter what the need is tonight, that we can trust in you to supply that need. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Linda. So now we'll officially call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Alderpersons Borneman,
Here.
McClanathan,
Here.
Ross,
Here.
Parker is absent, Busker,
Here.
Brashaw,
Here.
Mysick,
Here.
and Berberay.
Here.
And if you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Alderman Berberay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the meeting is yours, Alderman Berberay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First action for this evening is item number 4 on the agenda, and there has been a change. The city manager has requested item number 10 be deleted for further discussion at a later time. What is your pleasure, council?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of item number 10.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved. In any other discussion? Moved and seconded by Alderman Bradshaw and Alderman Busker. Those in favor signify by saying aye. I'm sorry. You're Mysick. Sorry, excuse me.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Approval. Next item is approval of the minutes from the Committee of the Whole of our meeting of August the 10th of 2020. Council, what is your pleasure here?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Is that you, Mr. Busker? Alderman Busker and Alderman Mysick? Any other discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Public comments, no one registered, so we have no public comments for this evening. Let's move on to item number 7. Item number 7 is discussion of Humane Pet Shop Ordinance, presented by Mr. Mark Ayers of the Humane Society. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Freeport City Council. Should I present with the mask on? Is that preferred? Or whichever. Okay. If I get too hot, I'll probably just take it off for a little bit. My name is Mark Ayers. I'm the Illinois State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. I'm actually based down in Springfield, and I've been with the HSUS for about 5 years. And primarily my duties have been working in the state legislature, trying to pass pro-animal welfare reforms, but also when we're not in session, traveling the state and trying to pass pro-animal welfare local ordinances throughout the state of Illinois. And one of the most popular type of ordinances that we have passing in Illinois and throughout the country are what we call a Humane Pet Store ordinance. And prevention is better than the cure when it comes to this item, and you'll see what I mean by that as I go throughout my presentation. And so when we're talking about should probably use a clicker. A Humane Pet Store ordinance. These humane ordinances simply state that if there's a pet store in your community, that those stores, instead of selling from commercially bred puppies from breeders or USDA licensed breeders, that they then sell those animals, those dogs and cats, from shelters, rescues, and animal controls instead. And so they're basically two different models, coming from commercial breeders versus coming from shelters, rescues, and animal control. And so 99 times out of 100, when you have a store in your city that sells from a commercial breeder, those puppies are likely coming from a puppy mill. Not all the time, but likely coming from a mill. And these are places that just breed puppies just for profit, okay? versus that humane model that we'll talk to here in just a second. And so puppy mills are what we're calling these facilities. These are places where puppies are just bred just to be a product. And they keep dogs in very poor conditions solely to produce puppies just for the pet trade. And these types of places focus on quantity over the quality of animal that they are breeding, in the case we're talking about dogs in this case. And they focus on profit over the welfare of those animals. And puppy mills can literally be anywhere. They're not indicative to just Illinois. They are throughout the Midwest. They are literally in every single state. They can literally be anywhere. And so Freeport is lucky because there's not a commercially selling pet store here in Freeport. But if you had a commercially selling pet store in Freeport, this is the kind of model that they operate on. And it's kind of a cyclical system here where puppies are bred in these cruel puppy mills, and then they are then handed off to a broker, which is kind of like a middleman who works with the multiple breeders and pet stores to kind of cherry pick certain dogs to be sold in certain pet stores. And then that broker then delivers those puppies to the retail outlet, which then is bought from the consumer. And then that cycle continues again and again and again, and it keeps alive and it keeps going, this puppy mill to pet store pipeline. And this is the very type of thing that these humane ordinances are trying to stop. And this is why, and this, I know this is a kind of a depressing slide, but we've seen this throughout the state and throughout the entire country with puppies sold from these types of pet stores. They are likely to be sick and have behavioral issues. They literally know nothing but a life inside of a cage, and the cost is outrageous. I mean, we're talking in the thousands of dollars in vet bills and emotional stress. You know, we passed a couple ordinances in Downers Grove and in Naperville that did have commercially selling pet stores, and the city council was flooded with hundreds of people who had bought from these stores. They brought their sick animals. Some couldn't bring them because they had passed away. And so it's a very heart-wrenching model to operate on, which is why we push so hard for these types of humane pet store ordinances. And so they've got thousands of dollars in vet bills, and typically these pet stores sell these puppies using deceptive sales tactics to hide the truth and maximize their profits. There was a store that I passed in Naperville this store often was selling puppies from $2,000 up to $8,000 and $9,000 for just an 8-week-old puppy. And normally people don't have that kind of pocket change lying around when they walk into a pet store. And so they made it very easy by saying, no money down, you don't have to pay today. You can just sign this leasing agreement or this finance agreement and walk out the door today with the puppy. And when they don't read the fine print, they're stacked with 188% interest. And I saw that 188% interest on a finance agreement just earlier this year. And I've seen upwards of 200 and 300% in other states. And people don't typically read the fine print well. It's not until they get home and realize, what did I just do? And so they're paying way more than double for the price of that puppy in the course of those years. Those pet stores will also say that those puppies are USDA certified breeders. And I'll get to those conditions from USDA breeders here in a second. It sounds like a great thing, but the standards of care are very, very low. So it sounds nice, but it's not the creme de la creme of standards. The puppies have congenital defects. There are disease outbreak concerns, and consumers unknowingly support the cruel puppy mill industry by purchasing these puppies from these pet stores. And our Illinois pet stores are really no exception. There's really just 30 total in about the whole state, and almost all 30 of them exist in about 4 counties. They're in Cook, Will, Lake, and DuPage County for the most part. There's one out in the Quad City area, but by and large, they all exist out in that 4-county-wide area. And we did a Chicago undercover pet store investigation. There are still several stores in Chicago, despite an ordinance, that are skirting the intent of the ordinance, and they are still routinely buying from puppy mills per their inspection reports, and one just bought from a breeder, which is a blatant violation of the law. We have our HSUS Puppy Buyer Complaint Survey, and we ranked 3rd for having received the highest number of pet store complaints. And the reason why we are so high is because even though puppy mills are not unique throughout the whole country, Illinois has a specific high number of pet stores, primarily in that four-county area. And so puppy mills love to sell to Illinois because we have a market for those puppies to be sold. And so they typically go to a city where folks can shell out that money. And if you're having a lot of pet stores selling puppies, you're going to have a high number of complaints from those pet stores. And I think our numbers are going up. I wouldn't be surprised if we're number 2 at some point. We're getting complaints all the time from people buying these sick mill dogs from these stores. There were a dozen reported cases of Campylobacter in Illinois linked to pet stores. This is a bacteria-resistant strain. It's a zoonotic outbreak that was transferred from puppies to humans. So humans literally touching a puppy and they got sick. And these all stemmed from a case, a breeder, a puppy mill in Indiana, where this pet store chain bought their dogs from. And so this was a CDC national advisory across the whole country of sick mill dogs traced back to this one store chain through that one breeder in Indiana. And that can be prevented with a humane ordinance. And the records show that pet stores in the state purchase from puppy mills, and we'll get to that here in a minute. And so going to Illinois law, the Illinois Animal Welfare Act doesn't stop completely unregulated puppy mills from selling puppies into pet stores. And the state, county, and local officials really don't have the means, and they certainly don't have the authority to inspect breeding facilities outside their borders. And the reason why I put that second bullet point up was we're beginning to see a number of ordinances passed, not so much in Illinois, but throughout other states, that are put forward by the pet store industry, stating that if they can come to your town, then they'll set forth very good breeding standards for the puppies coming into their pet stores. The problem is, if you're in Illinois, a lot of these dogs are coming from Indiana and Missouri and Ohio and Iowa. And Freeport or any other city just does not have the authority to investigate the standards in out-of-state dog breeders. And so it sounds like a nice thing to comply with, but it's actually completely unenforceable. And the USDA licensed facility does not guarantee a humane breeder, which brings me to this slide here. So these are some of the standards set forth by the USDA, and the USDA does license these commercial dog breeders that sell to pet stores. So dog breeders with 5 or more intact females that sell sight unseen, which is to a pet store, must have a USDA license and adhere to standards under the Animal Welfare Act. And so under this federal act, the USDA, these licensed facilities, may legally keep dogs stacked in wire cages just 6 inches larger than themselves. So very minimal sizing requirements with the stacked cages. They can deny those dogs adequate exercise and socialization. These puppies literally don't have to be let out ever from their cages, ever, at a USDA facility. They can be stacked in them forever with wire floors on top of one another, which means your typical mill of dogs urinating and defecating on top of one another. They can keep these dogs in extreme temperatures for up to 4 hours per USDA rule. They breed dogs repeatedly and excessively without limit, so they can breed literally every heat cycle to supply puppies into these pet stores. And they don't have to provide any vet care beyond the annual walkthrough of the facility. And so these are just some of the USDA standards. And the USDA has always insisted that breeders go above and beyond these standards. Some do, a lot of them don't. They comply with the baseline standards because it's cheaper to house dogs like this than have immaculate conditions, the creme de la creme of standards for these puppies in their stores. And so I say all this because there really is a solution, and the solution actually works quite well, and it's a Humane Pet Store Ordinance. And so what these really do is they prevent a puppy selling pet store from opening by protecting the consumers from ending up with a sick puppy or behaviorally challenged puppy. They help reduce that public health risk, such as Campylobacter. They protect the consumers from financing schemes, and we consider predatory. And we can minimize the demand for puppy mill puppies in these pet stores by passing these humane ordinances. And we can encourage Freeport residents to adopt their next pet from a local shelter or a rescue, or to seek out a responsible breeder that they will meet in person to ensure the conditions align with their values. And here's the more good news. Freeport stores already comply with this anyway. There's no commercial selling pet store here in Freeport doing what I just set out that they were doing. And so I think Freeport would be a good location to potentially pass a Humane Pet Store ordinance just as a preventative measure in case those stores out in the 4 county-wide area begin coming west and opening up more stores in more cities. And in fact, one just went into Rockford not that long ago. So Freeport stores already comply, and hundreds of Illinois pet stores don't sell puppies at all in their stores. Again, only 30 or so do. A bulk of the market, 92% of the U.S. pet stores don't sell puppies in their stores. They've already gone humane. And this is a $95 billion pet market, which is dominated by the product and service industry. And so some of the biggest names in this industry already operate on this model. You've heard of PetSmart, you've heard of Petco, Pet Supplies Plus. They already do this. They already operate on this humane model. And so this is just a snapshot into Illinois and what we've been doing. We've passed 18 humane ordinances so far throughout the whole state. And this is really an issue that is snowballing across Illinois, and it's really snowballing across the whole country. So we've got 18 as we speak right now. We just passed over 364 in the entire country. And now we have entire states stepping up and solving this issue statewide. So this California, Maryland, and Maine have now passed statewide measures for these humane type ordinances or humane laws. And so I'm hoping that, with the grace of you folks, that you might be number 19 at some point with the humane ordinance. And I believe there's a copy attached in the agenda that you may have seen for tonight. But that is my presentation. That's kind of in a nutshell what these humane ordinances are. Again, in closing, they simply just state that puppies or cats sold in pet stores can only come from shelters, rescues, or animal control versus these commercial breeders, or sometimes known as puppy mills. So I've left my email for you and my cell phone, and I would be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Council, any questions, observations?
Chair.
Yes, Clayton.
Thank you. You answered one of my questions was one, did we have any in Freeport currently? And you said no. Reading through the definitions of your draft ordinance, and I saw one of your last slides talked about the difference, being one of the options that someone can meet with a local breeder that they can ensure on that. Do you believe the definitions in section 1 of your ordinance delineate, particularly I suppose by the definition of retail establishment for a pet store, between what you're trying to prevent versus an individual who has puppies that they offer for sale to folks in the community, things of that nature?
Absolutely, and that's a good question. Thank you. And my answer would be yes. We've drafted that type of language about a year or so ago, and it's been the kind that we've been using ever since by passing some of these local ordinances in the state, and it's very airtight. And if someone goes to a private breeder, someone wants to sell a dog or a puppy, that's a private sale, and that's not considered a retail sale for a puppy. And so unless it's an actual retail establishment, a commercial store, then that type of transaction would be completely accepted and not impacted whatsoever by the ordinance. In fact, we would really encourage that because the Humane Ordinance sets you down one of two paths. One is continue that shelter and rescue adoption model. And if people can't find what they're looking for in a shelter or a rescue or their animal control, then I would love for them to go directly to a breeder, a responsible breeder that they can meet in person, tour the facility, meet the mother dog, inspect the conditions for themselves, and see if their values align with the puppy and the owners that's being sold. So I hope that answered your question, sir.
That does. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Alderman Mizek.
So thank you for coming to present tonight. I had a question on AKC registered breeders and so forth. So you were just describing a bit on the side of puppy mills with substandard conditions for the parenting animals and so forth. And have you found that many of those are making claims of AKC, or are? I simply want to be able to inform the public on how to handle this, or how to know what a reputable breeder is, and how to know one from another.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and it's even difficult to answer sometimes. You know, the AKC, you know, has a charter that they put out to their members that they have to abide by. And, you know, one of the standards that they have in their charter is that they want to sell their puppies to people that they know, and that they vet, and that they know, that they meet, and that those people can come to them and inspect, you know, their conditions and make sure that the bloodline is correct, they're being exercised well, their humane standards and all that. And so in some ways, the AKC does support these types of things, because if you're going to a pet store, that's really a middleman in this process. The AKC, again, would likely not sell to a pet store because they want to meet their potential buyer. But I will say they have not been big fans of these ordinances, and I really can't even explain why that's the case. I think some have been likely selling to pet stores just for profit, and not so much interested in meeting with potential buyer and having them inspect their conditions. But again, I go back to the way these ordinances work is it takes you back down those two paths, the humane side, which is a shelter and rescue model, or directly to the source, which in many cases could be some of those AKC breeders. And if we're diverting attention and money away from these retail establishments, and that money's either going back into individual's pocket, the breeder, or to the humane side. So I think it's a win-win situation. But again, anyone that's going to be buying a puppy or even a dog or a cat or a rabbit should really go right to the source and make sure that they can meet those persons face-to-face, that it's not some sham operation, that they're not just stacking cages and complying with the baseline standards. They should really go in person and do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
thank you. Is there a definition of puppy mills? I mean, is that, I realize you said earlier that there's 5 or more breeding females requires a USDA license, but what is the definition of puppy mills?
Those definitions, I mean, they vary from kind of organization to organization, but I put a few of them here, just, what they typically are. They're operations that breed just for profit. And so they're not really interested in the welfare of the animal or the conditions of that animal. They want to breed as often as they can to maximize their profit. And so that's why they typically have the stacking of the cages and the wire floors, is they're easy to clean. And so that also saves time and space. And so anytime where you have an operation that breeds for profit in a great volume every single heat cycle, that's getting you to, it's likely a puppy mill. So there's really not a single definition for that, but these are some of the things that can be seen at those mills. And for example, in Adams County earlier, I think it was late last week, a mill actually was busted by the authorities, and it was licensed by the state, actually. And Quincy Humane Society took in over 300 dogs. Over 300. I mean, that is an insane amount of animals in a facility, and that just tells you that place is breeding every single heat cycle, probably has who knows how many females that are pumping out puppies every single day. And so that's kind of a telltale sign of that there's a mill there in Adams County, and luckily it's shut down and it's not going to open again. But these are places that just breed for profit and not high volume.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Alderman Bornan?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate your passion on the topic and the presentation. I'm looking at your ordinance. Section 2 is the restriction on sale of animals, and really the meat of the ordinance, it seems like. So this is a prohibition for any pet store to sell cats or dogs, regardless of where they were obtained from. Is that a fair reading of that?
As long as they're coming from, well, then there's the exceptions, the shelters, rescues, or animal control. But yes, it would stop the source if they're coming from any other USDA licensed breeder.
So to follow up on that, if they were coming from an animal care facility or a rescue organization, the pet store wouldn't be able to sell that animal then, right? They wouldn't be able to
Correct.
collect any fee for.
That's correct.
Is there a reason, or can you explain the reason behind not even allowing the pet store to charge a fee for the rescue organization to display the animals?
Well, we haven't seen, we're trying to avoid some shenanigans. You know, if a store, you know, it tries, you know, partnering up with a legitimate shelter and then say they want to charge $500, you know, as a fee, you know, next to the adoption, that's still a lot of money being exchanged and given back to the pet store. And we don't want them to have any incentive to maybe be funneling in puppy mill dogs under the radar and then getting a profit from it. And it's really that model that we've seen PetSmart, Petco, Pet Supplies Plus have done, is they stay independent of the transaction. And so whenever you go into those stores, there's an actual shelter taking care of the adoption fee, the licensing, the paperwork, all of that. But then while you're there, you're spending your money on the supplies and the food and the collars and the toys and stuff like that. So we try to keep them separate so that they don't have really a financial stake in the sale of the animal. It's just a purely adoption event for those animals being sold.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or observations?
Chair.
Alderman Ross.
Okay, sir. Now, when the retail store buys a animal, do they have to keep records where they got it from?
Yeah, there's records of those sales, yep, and the origin of them.
I mean, do they keep a record of whom they bought it from?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
The USDA keeps track of all that information. The USDA does.
Okay.
I have a question for Manager Bucas. Sir, Section 3 penalty proposes a $500 civil penalty. What mechanism will Freeport create to allow a citizen to report a violation, and/or what will be the city's involvement in correcting that, collecting the fee, the fine, and so on and so forth? Or will that be built into the final legislation?
I would say that would have to be built in the final legislation as to the implementation of the enforcement.
Okay, thank you.
And I could just add that $500 fee we just kind of put out there as a deterrent. We've seen some cities go higher than that, and they kind of have a tiered approach to 500 first offense, you know, 1,000 on second offense, but we've also seen them go lower with the fee as well.
Thank you. And I have a further question, probably for council and your thoughts. A short time on the council, I'm looking at the series of whereases on page 1. Is it typical background to include in legislation? It seems, I don't know, almost, it's factual, I'm sure, but it seems it doesn't apply necessarily to the way the ordinance is put together. So like it's random, it's background, it ought to be, shouldn't be part of the policy is what I'm saying. I don't know how you all feel about that.
Chair.
Yes.
I would just ask legal counsel to, if we were to choose to put in ordinance form, to rewrite it in our ordinance format that we use for the city of Freeport, and perhaps make those suggestions on how to enforce with that verbiage added.
Okay.
Is that correct?
We can certainly do that. If the council wants to move forward, we can, this is a model sample ordinance there, so as far as the whereases, if there are certain provisions that you think are maybe unnecessary or go outside the confines of what the council's position is, we can remove those whereases.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Alderman Wesker.
Yeah, with moving this forward for further rewrite, I'm sure our local shelters do it already, because I've adopted from shelters here in the area and they do, but make sure it's in the ordinance somewhere that if a store is going to sell or allow adoption out of their agency, that they do a background check on the forever homes as well. Make sure that's included in there, because, you know, we're worried about the health and welfare of the animals, where they came from, but what about where they're going? We've got a lot of cats out on the street in this town.
Okay. Any other observations? So the pleasure of the council is to, with proper ordinance language, move this forward to the next city council meeting for its first reading. This is not, is this considered the first reading? No, I didn't think so.
No.
Okay, it's just discussion. So we have to approve this to move forward, correct? And that would be a voice vote? Or that would be a roll call vote?
You would have a motion, a second, and then I think we've traditionally just done it as a voice vote.
Make a motion to move it forward.
Thank you, Alderman Busker. Is there a second to that?
I'll
Alderman
second.
Borneman,
Yep.
seconded. Motion is to move this forward with appropriate language, so to speak, and present it for first reading at the next council meeting. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming up. Appreciate it. Next item on our agenda is number 8, the discussion of an ordinance amending Chapter 806, alcoholic liquor sales to a downtown festival district. Liquor Commissioner, Mr. Tim Mahoney.
Good evening. I'm just on the commission. The mayor's the commissioner. Good evening, everybody. Ms. Mayor, Mr. City Manager, Alderman Berberet, and everybody else. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I'd like to start out on a personal note. I have not had an opportunity to thank this body. Mahoney & Mahoney is 100% in at 109 Main Street. And actually today, MEI closed on all the loans, including the loan with the city for that property. And the build-out is beautiful. Everybody, I offer you an invitation to come down and take a look at it. Lumberjack Builders and Chris Fye did an amazing job, and everything there was done by people from Freeport, including custom-made furniture and even some of the artwork. And we're very proud of the facility. So thank you. Without you guys, it wouldn't have gotten completed. So I really appreciate it. Let's talk about what tonight is not, okay? There was no intention on you guys actually looking at a specific ordinance tonight. That got sent to you. That wasn't the idea. That is an old version of a prior ordinance, so please ignore that in terms of what we're talking about this evening. Tonight is simply a conversation over this particular idea. There was a prior conversation at the City Council, which I was not here for, which you did not vote on anything. The issue was tabled, and I don't know about you, but that seems like kind of a lifetime ago prior to what we're dealing with now with masks and COVID and the like. So we're here to have a new conversation about this idea of a festival district. Let's talk about a couple of other basic ideas before we move forward. Last time I was before you guys, we were here talking about the new liquor ordinances that the Liquor Commission had spent a great deal of time rewriting and then presenting to you. So number one, when I come up and talk to you guys about something, it's something that the Liquor Commission has spent a lot of time with. It's not something that we've done willy-nilly. It's something that we've looked into significantly, and when we bring it to you, it comes to you unanimously and with a great deal of thought put into it. Secondly, I'd like you to also remember that we've got 2 retired police officers on the Liquor Commission, lifetimers. That's 2 out of 4 people on the commission that come from the police department. So you can bet that if I come to you with an idea from the Liquor Commission, it's approved by the police department, or at least the idea and how we're going to move forward is approved by the police department. So we're obviously going to have a conversation with regards to that, but we're not going to bring anything to you unless the police department has said that it's okay. So tonight we're here to talk about this idea of a festival district, and I want to cover 3 basic ideas: the district boundaries, duration and times, and control of that particular district while it's being put into force. And please jump up and ask questions at any time. There's no need to wait until the end of the conversation. So in terms of district boundaries, here's the basic district that we've proposed at this point to take a look at. And again, we did this with a great deal of intent. Now, I know the ordinance that you had a typo in terms of, but again, we're not here to look at a specific ordinance. We're not here to look at a specific set of rules. We're just here to look at some principles. So if you notice, on the southernmost portion there on Galena, we have a piece that kind of sticks out. That's designed to specifically go and try to pick up the grocery store that's there. The southern boundary catches that supermarket, and then it also catches the Wagner House. The idea with this was to try to have an area that can contain and be managed by the police department, but at the same time not leave anybody out in terms of downtown. The easterly boundary encompasses Pub 219 and Grand River Hall, so that they're both included. We also think it probably includes Sunshines too, right, Steve? We think, where'd Steve go? There he is. We do think that this includes Sunshine Liquors, because one of the things that got brought up after we looked at this map is, are they being left out? We don't necessarily want to leave them out. We do think it actually does include them. The northern boundary stays on the other side of the street from the library. Notice, it doesn't go across into the library, Union Dairy, or Douglas Square. It stays on the opposite side of the street of that. Again, that's on purpose. But it does incorporate the new art square in case that expands, so that someday maybe there'll be music there, someday maybe there'll be some type of festival there. The idea with this is to create a district that's going to be utilized for years, a dozen years, 20 years, and it can be turned on and off as is necessary in order to specifically work with whatever is going on at that time. So these are kind of the idea boundaries. Anybody have any conversations about those before I move into duration and times? We can certainly go at the end. Duration and times. Now, one of the things that came up in a prior conversation was the Liquor Commission was a lot more excited about this idea than the City Council maybe was in terms of duration and times. So I think that we were approaching it with a great deal of enthusiasm, whereas the City Council wanted it to be a little bit more of, let's see how it works before we jump in with both feet, which of course the Liquor Commission is perfectly happy to do. And I think that was a little bit more in tune with what we got from the police department also. So we'd like it to start out, if everybody agrees with this idea and it does eventually get approved, with limited dates and selective weekends, 4 or 5 times in the first year, just to see how it goes. So we would like do something in conjunction with a Music on Chicago, or an Arctic Walk, or some other festival that is going on, or maybe have it on its own separate weekend just to see how it works. One of the things I do want you to know, as we talk about these durations and times, if there's a problem with this, we're gonna pull it. We're gonna set up the ordinance so that specifically the liquor commissioner, our mayor, not the commission, so we don't even have to call a meeting, we're gonna set it up so the commissioner can at any time yank this and decide that it's not working. So that's one phone call. So if Chief Summers calls the mayor and says, hey, this ain't working, bang, it's over, and the festival district is no longer operational for that event or at that time until we revisit it, okay? So if it doesn't work, we yank it back. We're gonna avoid family center events and focus on the entertainment events. We're gonna do limited times in service. So one of the things that we've talked about there is Friday or Saturday, 5 o'clock to like 11 is some of the times that's been discussed. The police actually suggested going earlier. So initially we talked about 6. They were the ones that kind of said, why don't you actually start it earlier and pick up some of the happy hour stuff, but certainly don't go past 11. Some of that can be adjusted, seeing at how it goes. If we all of a sudden realize that there's problems after 10, like some of the things that happened with cruise night, we figured out, after 9 o'clock it starts to become problematic. Let's end it earlier. Maybe we look at it and we decide, 11 o'clock, you're not having any troubles. Maybe the Lindo ends up getting a liquor license, which it certainly can at this point. And sometimes movies get out after 11, especially if it's a James Cameron movie. So maybe we decide, hey, maybe we'll move it to midnight instead of 11 o'clock. Those are all kind of the things that we're discussing. But right now, the current conversation is if we were to do this, it would be somewhere around 5 to 11. Well-published dates and advance notice. One of the things we do want to do is make sure that if the city does approve this eventually, it gets a chance. We want to make sure that we do it in a way so that everybody can put this forward and it can be publicized and it can get an opportunity. And while I'm on the idea of that, one of the other pieces of confusion when this was last talked about was where this idea came from. And there was some issue, did it come from downtown development, did it come from this came from the Liquor Commission, okay? This was brought forth by us, this is our idea, we're the ones that are putting this forward. We actually had a conversation as to where the first idea came from. It might have come from the mayor. And we patterned ourselves after what Champaign has done for years and years and years, and many other cities that have a great degree of downtown development and downtown activity that's done safely, but with a tremendous amount of economic activity for the downtown businesses. But this is coming from the Liquor Commission. It's not coming from anybody else. Duration and times. Any conversation?
Chair.
Yes.
Alderman McClanathan.
All right, thank you. I think it's important when we get to a product that we're actually going to review, you know, in regards to it, not what we have in front of us right now, that we do have specific rules and regulations laid out in regards to not to exceed amount of times, what the hours are on it. I definitely would like to see that in the final draft. Also, just a general note, bringing it up now rather than later. I understand needing to have some of the authority maybe to quickly shut something down if you need to, but in regards to generally setting up rules and regulations, the way it was previously opposed was very open-ended and left a lot of authority to the Liquor Commissioner. I think we need to have established guidelines set here so we know what we're authorizing, not just authorizing a general district and then it takes on its life of its own, well-intentioned on it. So I think we need to have a little more localized control where we set some boundaries at the city council level with the understanding that inside of those boundaries there needs to be some flexibility for you guys to maneuver.
Okay. Anything else? In terms of, and thank you, Alderperson McClanathan, and, you know, obviously today we're just the idea of the district, you know, and then from there we can, because, you know, who knows what tomorrow's going to bring, right, guys? I mean, if I was standing here a year ago and I said we'd all be wearing masks, everybody would have thought that was crazy, but here we are. So in terms of control, some of the points that we definitely think should be in this. Number one, liquor only in bars. So there's nowhere else to serve liquor other than in the bars, so it has to be done by Bassett-trained servers. Because one of the things you could do is you can include this with like a Music on Chicago so that you could go from the music to Mort's and then you could get something to eat, or you could go to 219. But you can't get liquor, poured liquor, other than in a bar, so it's by a Bassett-trained server. You could get beer or wine, but only liquor. Wristbands or cups issued only in the bars. So you're going to have a specific cup or a specific wristband or both in order to be around with an open seal. And it's going to have to be issued by a participating establishment. The cups are not going to be the same. They're going to rotate, so you can't come back on Saturday with the same cup that you had on Friday. The bars, it's going to be up to them as to whether or not they wish to participate. So if they don't participate, then they don't. And you don't get a beverage from that particular establishment and leave to go to another establishment. So they can decide if they want to participate or not. We can figure out how the cups operate. We spent some time talking about that, but I think that that's relatively easy. I think the bars do get to charge for them like $1. Also, a lot of the establishments are going to be given the opportunity. You can't come into their establishment with a drink from somebody else's. They can make that rule if they want, or they can say that you can if you want, because some places might not want you going across the street to get a drink and then coming back to their establishment where that drink might be more expensive. The idea being that we want to try to protect everybody and give everybody the opportunity to participate how they want. This is where we have that the Liquor Commissioner can terminate at any time if there's an issue, so that's the mayor. A business can opt out. You know, we consult with the PD with regards to everything that we do constantly. Captain Summers or a representative is at all of our meetings or on call for anything that we do. So we don't do anything that isn't already approved by those guys. The other thing that we want to do is have enhanced penalties for violations of the district. We've already got plenty of laws with regards to public intoxication, disorderly conduct. You know, we got laws on the books for those, so we don't need more laws. But we want to put in there, and again, it's up to you guys as to what you do, but we want to put in there that during the time when the festival district is in effect, that if you engage in a disorderly conduct or any type of ordinance violation, that it's going to be an enhanced penalty. We can't do that with regards to a state violation, as Mr. Borneman, I'm sure, would point out. But with an ordinance violation, we can. And so we think that that would be that's something requested by the PD. We thought that that made complete sense. You know, even a 50% greater fine if it's during festival district times. And we would obviously publicize that, put it up so that people understand that that's the situation. Gives the PD a little bit more bite with regards to enforcing anything that needs to be done. And again, this is all let's try this, see how it goes, and see how it evolves, which the PD is on board with.
Chair. I have a question.
Alderman Ross.
What about, have you included the parklets? I say, you have service for liquor and bars only, but what about the parklets that's out in front of the establishment, being a bar?
So if you're in the parklet, then you're not actually out on the street, you're as part of that establishment. So that parklet is an extension of that particular establishment. So let's say 219. When you're in their parklet, you are their responsibility. So, I mean, one of the reasons we want to have liquor only be served at the bars is because the bars are the ones to make sure that they're not over-serving anybody, and they have dram shop insurance for that particular situation. So if you're in the parklet, then you're on their turf.
So a follow-up, so in other words, all included, so that the base has been covered.
Right. If you leave that parklet, then you've got to have one of the magic cups
Right.
issued by that establishment for that particular evening.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
I assume liquor includes wine, beer, hard spirits, or just liquor, as I would define it.
Liquor would have to be served in the district. It would have to be served by the bars. If we had,
What's it include?
yeah,
All the above, okay. Anything, okay. Anything you buy in a liquor store,
right.
okay.
Chair?
Mr. McClatchy?
Thank you. The way you propose presenting this to us, it's going to allow for individuals to possess or consume on public way only, correct? So we're not going to have a situation where someone gets it from one of these licensed entities and then goes into, Mahoney and Mahoney or whatever. It's just for on the public way or in these licensed establishments?
Well, that would depend on what's going on. I mean, if it was the wine tasting and it was part of that, then they could go into, non-designated areas, meaning non-bars, right? I mean, am I right?
But that would be part of the guidelines of the wine tasting ordinance.
Right. That would be part of that particular event. Otherwise, can they go into somebody's private store with the alcohol? Is that what you're asking me?
That, as drafted, you're putting it, you're not establishing that. You're just saying, your old version had public way, and I realize that might not be, but is that the same intent?
Yeah, there's an opt-out provided. So if the store doesn't want you, they don't have to take you. So in other words, you've got a store that's open on an evening when the festival district is in place, which, by the way, we are strongly encouraging people to consider if you want to sell. You can tell people they can't come in with with a drink.
So we got obviously like 200 businesses downtown. They're going to have to make a determination in regards to that?
Sure. Do you want to let people in who have alcohol or not? You can tell them that you don't want them to bring it in.
Okay, so you are looking to expand on what you previously had in the language?
I'm just having a conversation right now. I'm waiting to see if we get authority to actually write something that everybody will take a look at. Personally, if I've got a business downtown and I'm selling things, you ever seen people shop in Las Vegas? I mean, but if the city council wants it so that that's not an option, then that's not an option. If you want it to be on a public way, then we'll put it that it's on a public way.
Chair?
Question, Alderman Ross and I had the privilege a year or two ago of being wine tenders at one of the stores downtown on the wine festival. I don't think he's Bassett trained, I'm sure I'm not. Would that allow for us, how would that store become, because it's not a bar, it's a retail store. How does that become involved in this ordinance?
So when the wine tasting was originally done, you couldn't leave.
You couldn't leave.
Right, you had to finish before you left.
Right.
And I think our intent with this is to create an opportunity where for an event like that, you could finish and go to your next place. And then have your wine while that was going on, if everybody thinks that that's a reasonable idea.
Because we weren't selling it.
Right, you weren't selling it. Go ahead. Yep, I can tell that he wants to.
Thank you.
Well, it's a different thing.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
So what the wine tasting would be is a charitable event that was licensed subject to a special event permit.
Okay.
So the art museum comes in with a specific request and said, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this for 1 weekend, period. And then there's an exemption for Bassett-trained servers in that charitable volunteers can serve. That's right in the liquor code. Not ours, but the Liquor Control Act. So what we're trying to do here with the festival district is make something that's, that you can kind of flip the switch off and on, and it's not specific to any one business or any one event. It's a one-size-fits-all. So in this circumstance, what the Liquor Commission is proposing is that it be all bars, all Bassett-trained servers. If it doesn't preclude one of those other events being licensed under a special event, it's just that this framework wouldn't encompass that. That answer?
Thank you. Other questions, council? Alderman Bordeman?
Thank you. The question I have kind of works off what McClanathan was saying, in that you have a festival going on. I purchased a drink and I'm walking the street. There's a store open. I'm thinking, let's picture Maine in Chicago. You have the restaurant, which I can't think of now.
This is eatery?
No, the breakfast place.
Landmark?
Landmark, right. I wasn't moving on until I figured that out. So. The Landmark, I could walk into the Landmark, order food, and the Landmark would then have the authority to have people in their restaurant with alcohol. They could choose to say, you can't bring that in here, but this would allow a business, which normally you couldn't have alcohol and they'd need a license to have, even bring your own. This would grant them that type of license for that day if they wanted to opt in?
Well, there's nothing here granting anybody anything, okay? We're not presenting an ordinance, we're talking about an idea.
Yeah.
So, under that circumstance, the answer to that would be yes. If the city council doesn't want that to be an option, then the answer to that would be no. You'd have to stay on a public way.
No, that's fine. That answers my question. I'm just,
Yeah.
like you said, we're talking about ideas here, so that could be one option. Then I leave the Landmark and I go across to Generations Boutique, which I guess my question is, let's say I was in Generations Boutique and I had a drink today, like I had an alcoholic beverage. Is there something that prohibits that on the books right now that or is council aware of an ordinance that would be violating?
I know if you go to a hair salon.
Yeah, so technically, so what's prohibiting that is you can't get there.
Right.
You can't have liquor on the street. So that's what would prohibit you from carrying it in. Now, once you're there, you're on private property. And there's really nothing that says that you can't have liquor on private property so long as it wasn't purchased or served there. Well, actually, purchased there. Yeah, the Liquor Control Act only governs point of sale, as does our ordinance. So, as Mr. Mahoney points out, there is an opportunity, some salons, I think, offer a glass of wine with a haircut or something like, that's okay.
Okay, so I guess, because I'm thinking about McClanathan's hypothetical, and I get it, the idea of just people walking into stores shopping with, double fisting cans of beer, but if I walked in, if somebody walks into Generations Boutique with an unopened beer can and then opens it when they're in Generations Boutique, they're not violating any ordinance, right? I'm not advocating people do this, but.
Well, right, it's getting it there. That's the criminal activity, is getting it to there.
If it's sealed when he walks in, if he hasn't opened it until he goes in.
As long as it's properly packaged.
And Generations could say, you have to leave, you can't drink in here, because it's a private business.
And the idea, again, we aren't looking at any particular ordinance, but I think when it was brought forward before, this was thought about, and the idea was to have an opt-out. In other words, okay, we're lighting up the festival district. Downtown businesses may differ on whether they think that's a good idea or a bad idea for them to have participants wandering in and out of their store. As Mr. Mahoney points out, I think a lot of times retail is going to want that traffic, that foot traffic in. A law office, for instance, you probably don't want people wandering in, so you're gonna have the door locked. But what you can do, even if you're open during those hours, is you can hang a sign. And, we can specifically provide for what the content of that is or what that looks like, but you can hang a sign and say, no carry-ins permitted. And that has to be, that has to be abided by, otherwise we've got a violation with enhanced penalties. So I think that was the way it was proposed, but again, I think that that's something that, I don't think that's something that the Liquor Commission would deem a failure of the ordinance to regulate that one way or another.
Chair?
Sure.
Yes, Alderman Warden, excuse me, Planton.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, we gotta see something in writing to be able to, otherwise we're dealing in hypotheticals of you say, well, maybe I'm not in that hypothetical, maybe I'm not. So realistically, I mean, I don't mind taking a look at what you guys put together in regards to it and then, then hashing it out where we're at on it. But I don't know how deep we can really get into a discussion further tonight without having something more concrete in front of us.
Well, part of the idea was obviously just floating this idea. Are you guys even willing to consider it? It sounds like the answer to that is yes. So then the second was, all right, well, let's flesh out where you're at, so when we hand you something, it's close to what you're thinking about, So, that's why council's here. We're taking all the notes, so when we go back and decide, okay, what is it that's gonna work, as much information as we can get is great, because then that's more that we have to write this in a way that makes sense for you guys.
Chair?
Yes.
So I had several questions coming into this, and I guess this one's been answered. You said the police are supportive of this idea?
Yes.
Okay. The next is there a public demand for this idea?
You're the elected officials, I don't know. I don't know if there's a public demand or not a public demand. Yeah,
Well-
here's my push with regards to this. Personally, I think Freeport, Illinois right now is in a period that it has not been since 1950, maybe since the Industrial Revolution. The youth of this country who have packed themselves into cities across the nation are fleeing like rats from a sinking ship. And 50% of them are not going back. 80% have left, 30% are going to go back, but law offices, architectural firms, accounting firms, all of their footprints in major cities are going to be reduced by 50%. 50% of their people are going to work virtually. San Francisco is a ghost town. Parts of New York are back looking like they did in the 1970s. So are parts of Chicago. All of those people are looking for places to go. I don't know if you've noticed, but home sales in Freeport have skyrocketed. Demand is through the roof. You're seeing bidding wars. You're seeing houses that have been listed, selling for listing price in 24 hours. That means they weren't listed for enough money. That's what's going on in Freeport right now, and it's going on everywhere in small towns. San Francisco and California are moving to Colorado, Arizona, and the northern Midwest. They're coming to northern Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Minnesota. The people that are leaving the cities aren't going to the suburbs, they're going further. The combination of the lockdown and the civil unrest has made it so that they want space, they want a yard, they want a garden. We have all of that stuff. We have a tremendous park system. We have organically grown food that's out of the ground for an hour and you can buy it for a nickel. We have a toilet paper factory. Now that sounds like nothing, but my daughter in Santa Monica, California could not get toilet paper or paper towels or cleaning products for 2 months. Right. Oh my gosh is right. And that's where it's been everywhere, folks. Imagine if you're 17 years old and you've been locked into 1,200 square feet with your brother and your sister and your parents. My daughter was in her apartment for 115 days. they're all going to leave, and they're looking for places to go. They're going to look for places that are progressive and that are forward-thinking. Now, is this a deal breaker one way or another? No, I don't think so. But this is the type of thing that gets young people interested, in my opinion. And Freeport has the opportunity, I think, for the first time in forever, to raise their hand and say, please come here and take a look. We've got good internet. That's what they care about. They're going to be doing everything on Zoom. I go to court now on Zoom. I don't leave my new office. Thank God I built it. It's a brave new world. Now, some of it's going to go back, true. But think of the cities that have massive tourism, and what are their downtowns like? What is Nashville like? What is New Orleans like? What is Vegas like? This is what they do. And they do it safely and they do it effectively. You know, we've done a lot of new things. This administration has changed Freeport from the city that says no to the city that says yes. And everything has worked. We have not done one thing that hasn't worked out, from the pub crawl to the Arctic to the Brew Fest, which draws people in from hundreds of miles around. Everything that we've done has worked. And by the way, just because it might not work, to me, isn't a reason to give it a try. If we operate from fear, then we're not going to go anywhere. But I think right now we've got a chance to propel this city forward in a way that hasn't happened in a long, long time. And ideas like this, I think, are what are going to start to attract people even more. They're already coming. Give them more reason to come. And if you want to grow your downtown, foot traffic. People walking around is what you want. People walking around walk into stores. Our city manager said 1 out of 100 people who walk by walk into the store, 1 out of 100 who walk in the store buy something. I mean, we can all sit at home and just support Amazon, or we can try to get the downtown businesses to grow. And the way to get them to grow is to get people down there, moving around, doing stuff. And things like this can do that, in my opinion, and in the Liquor Commission's opinion. So that's why we're here. So I don't know if there's a public demand. I can tell you this. There's a public demand for places to go. And they're all looking.
Chair.
Alderman Boardman, were you through with your questions first? You said
I
you had
guess
3.
I did have, if it's all right, I'll
Go ahead.
just finish up here. You mentioned New Orleans and Vegas, but do you have samples or models you can point to of smaller towns more comparable to Freeport where this is going on, and ordinances from there you could provide to us?
We patterned this off of Champaign, and there are no other smaller towns doing this. That's the idea. Set us apart. Do something new. So we patterned this after Champaign, who's done this for a long time very successfully, and that is exactly the one that we looked at when we did this. And when it was first discussed, it was very closely patterned after Champaign.
And then my last question is, regardless of the public, are the bar owners downtown wanting this?
Our conversations with, yes, well, they're wanting anything right now, right? I mean, everybody's dying on the vine, especially with winter coming. But in our conversations with them, yeah, they love the idea. A lot of the distinctions that we've already brought to you have come from specific owners' concerns. Remember, I told you, we don't do this lightly. We talk to our licensees and ask them what their concerns are. So like when we brought the new liquor code to you guys, drive-through and all that, we had a lot of conversations with people about what their concerns were. So like one of the things was an opt-out. If I don't want to participate in this on a specific evening, can I do that? Yes. Can I stop somebody from coming into my establishment with somebody else's drink? They have to finish it at the door before they come into my establishment. That was specifically requested by one organization. Can we make sure that I'm included even though I'm not open every day, but sometimes I'm open for certain events? Sure. So we went down and we included the Raleigh complex. So we've talked to our licensees about this. So yeah, they're supportive. And anything to drive more traffic, they're going to be supportive.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Alderman Ross.
Okay, Ms. Mahoney. So basically, from your statement, when I'm interpreting is that you're saying, let's open it up. Because, I mean, why not? 'Cause that's what I understand. Let's open it up and give it a shot and see what happens there, because it sounds like to me a win-win situation. We got to start small and then build ourselves up, but still, we got a starting point and go from there.
I agree. I think this town for 30 years operated off of fear. We operated off of no. We're not going to try something because it might go wrong. Well, you know what? Some things probably are going to go wrong. We are probably going to have some mistakes along the way. But I'll tell you what, so far we're batting 1,000. I mean, everything's gone great.
Yes, and follow, yeah, because it's 2020. I mean, not just say the year, but it's time to try something new.
I don't know that the Liquor Commission shares my overall enthusiasm for how many people might come here. I mean, they certainly listened and didn't disagree, but that one comes from me. But they certainly share the enthusiasm for this idea. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent all this time and unanimously brought it here. You know, they think this is another idea that's going to help businesses and the downtown and are very supportive of it. And yes, they had more enthusiasm than maybe the city council had at the very beginning, but that's fine. We take our direction from you. So we do want to do it where we start out with smaller increments and see how it goes. Make sure that there's not a problem. The only thing we ask about that is please do it in a way that we can promote it so it gets a chance. So that it gets a chance. Because if we don't promote it enough and people are like, well, is it on this day or is it on, then nobody's going to know, right?
Chair?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You bet. No, in regards to this, as you indicated, we have been pretty permissive and pretty receptive and pretty open and experimenting on certain things. All of those things that came before us were either tightly constructed from the beginning or by the time the end product came out, were under pretty understood, well-defined, easy-to-operate guidelines. That's what I'm saying for something like this. The concept on this is broader than a lot of those. So when you bring a product to us, I want to see something that, even though it's larger in scope, it's well-defined in regards to how it's going to operate. You can always expand if something's successful and you say, oh, we think we can improve on it in here. It's a lot harder to do something that's too broad and then try to bring it in. I'd rather you do what you've done in the past, bring us a tight product that we can amend and adjust as need be, and then see where we want to go with it from there.
Sure, and we will. Would remind you that our mayor has the authority to yank this at any time. That's the way, if you guys pass it, that's the way it's written, is at any time, you know, the whole thing can be stopped if there's something that's not working. And we suggest that you leave that in if you do end up passing something. But we'll deliver a product that is very defined, like what you've had before. Along, you know, these festivals or these ideas, these days, these times, this is how it's going to work. This is going to be the penalty. This is the way it's going to work out. I will say some of it, you know, we patterned it a great deal after Champaign. Some of it we're going to have to see how it goes and then adjust. You know, I think a lot of that with the policing of it is going to be, if you guys pass it and if we move forward, is okay, you know, every year, okay, now we need to do it like we did with, like I said, I think Cruise Night is a good example of that, where the overall idea was a good idea, but we needed to tinker with it. We needed to do it earlier. We needed to not start the driving till, you know, there was some things that needed to be changed.
Mr. Mahoney, are you aware of any deadline, timeline, or any organizations willing to have some activity next year they need to plan for now?
Well, the Arctic Walk wouldn't be a bad time to give this a shot, you know, for the first time. The other thing, I mean, if there was some sort of holiday event where people could move around,
Okay.
you know, those are thoughts. You know, we're not, there's a lot of people, I think there's a lot of groups that would like to have all kinds of gatherings right now that we haven't been able to because of other situations. But like I said, we really wanted to just get, you know, we want it to be out there so that it's available, and then we can expand it or contract it as everybody agrees needs to happen. You know, because who knows where certain areas are going to develop. But yeah, I mean, I think it certainly could be utilized this winter.
Yeah.
For one or two things.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Metzger, yes.
Yes. Talking about an opt-out availability there. I was thinking more, you talked about putting up a sign, alcohol prohibited. I would almost see it as a better way to, maybe if you are gonna participate, the festival comes up with a sign that matches the cups or something so that people are more aware of what the sign looks like that they're looking for if that business is part of the festival, and not put any onus on anyone that wants nothing to do with it.
So an opt-in rather than an opt-out.
Exactly.
All right, so yellow cups, you put up a yellow sign. If you got a yellow cup, you can walk in where there's a yellow sign.
Perfect.
Gotcha. Okay, good idea.
Chair,
Alderman Boardman?
I'll make a motion to move this to the next committee of the whole meeting with hopes of seeing of reviewing the ordinance before it would get to first reading.
Second.
Second. Moved and seconded by Borneman and Busker. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
thank you. And in that, could we also have the map projected? I mean, so we can actually look at that as well?
Absolutely. Along those lines, is there any more conversation about the map? Oop.
Chair,
Yes.
I think last time you brought it, you went down to Jackson, this time it's to Spring. And you think it covers everything you need to do by doing that?
We do, and, that could change, but we specifically moved that over to give less boundary for the police to have to deal with.
Was that the same in regards to, I think it went up on Liberty to Exchange and then over, and now you just kind of cut that portion out because
Right.
you didn't need anything in that block?
Right. So we tried to do it where we did as little area as possible for the police to deal with,
Sure.
but still get everybody. We don't want to leave anybody out. Now if somebody opens something up on the other side of Spring, then we got to have that conversation, right? But for now, we think that includes everybody. Like I said, the only one that we really had a conversation about was Sunshines, and our reading of it is it's actually included with this.
Chair,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Mahoney, I hope they're going to make those big purple outlines on the sidewalks so people know where they can and can't walk, because they might be a little confused otherwise.
Well, the Catholics are used to that. No beer past here. So,
There you go.
Again, that's part of what we're all. Is it going to be barricades? Are we going to go around and spray paint? I mean, we've done all that, right? We've done it for. We've done it for Music on Chicago. We've done it for Brewfest. We've done that for all of those things. Even paint the port. I think that can be handled in terms of here's your defined line, and I think people are used to that. They're used to that in other cities. They're used to that in Monroe. They're used to that in Madison. They're used to there being, here's where you can't go past. No beer past here. Okay. You'll see somebody hit somebody else. Hey, we can't walk past here. Okay.
Any other final thoughts? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion to advance this, I guess in a more final form or close to a final form to the next committee of the whole, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried. Thank you for your enthusiasm and your work into the commission.
Thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Attorney Cox, thank you. Item number 9 this evening is discussion of ordinance establishing the compensation of the mayor, city clerk, and city council. Manager Vukas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been asked to review the salaries of elected officials and determine what the salary should be for the next 4 years. The city council has to set the salaries by November 7th, 2020. Last time the mayor's salary was set, it was decreased the first year and then raised 0.5% for the next 3 years. I would recommend that the mayor's salary be increased by 1% each year for the years beginning May 1st, 2021 through May 1, 2024. The position of city clerk was also decreased the first year and then raised by 0.5% the next 3 years. I'm recommending that the city clerk's salary be increased by 1% per year and a $2,500 stipend continue for achieving the Illinois Municipal Clerk Association certificate. This salary increase would begin May 1, 2021 and and it runs through May 1, 2024. And I further recommend that the alderman's salary remain the same.
Council, your pleasure. Questions, comments, observations? Thank you, Manager Bukas, for that.
Chair,
Yes.
thank you. As long as I've been on here, I don't think there's ever been an alderman who's recommended that the alderman's salary be raised, so I think that's fine. In regards to the mayor's salary and the city clerk, it's kind of a balance. I mean, they're elected positions, you know, the individuals choose to run in regards to it. You know, cost of living hasn't been increasing substantially lately. Inflation's been pretty low, but we don't know what it's obviously going to be over for next year's. 1% is probably a pretty reasonable. I mean, it's not substantial, but it's also, but it's, you know, again, it reflects the fact that it is an elected a position. It kind of maintains the status quo, I think, a little bit for going on. Also gives us the, and as well as anybody who might choose to pursue those positions down the road, some continuity as to what it's going to be over that range. So, personally, I don't have a problem with the 1%. I think if we start raising it past that, we start getting into some problems in regards to how are we dealing with other salaries and things of that nature.
Question, is the $2,500 stipend in addition to the salaries listed there, or is it included?
No, that would be in addition to the salary that's in the
Thank you very much.
memo.
Chair,
Who said, yes,
just for some historical background in regards to that was put in at the last time this was reviewed, because at that time we knew there was going to be a new clerk, and obviously didn't know whether that individual was going to have that certification or not, but it kind of gives an incentive for pursuing that professional development in that field. There are other certifications in which an individual can pursue in regards to that. However, I think giving this stipend for the IMCA certificate gives a nice baseline for pursuing some professional development, but once you start adding additional ones for additional certificates, again, it kind of becomes a slippery slope for other entities and professional certificates. So I think it's, again, just like with the 1%, I think it's kind of a decent balance.
thank you. Is it your pleasure this come back at the next committee of the whole or first reading at the next council meeting?
I had a question.
Sure.
To lay it out there, looking at your memo, it would be an increase, a 1% increase for the mayor's salary would be about $280 per year. And then for the clerk, a 1% increase is about a $560 increase for the year.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to put that out there.
Chair,
Yes.
and if the aldermen receive the 1% increase, it'd be $38 a year, or about $3 a month.
Thank you
First
for
raise we've ever got.
Thank you for the clarification. Don't spin it all in one place.
Chair,
Yes, Alderman Ross.
well, all jokes aside, I think they're well-deserved to have this increase. We don't accept these positions for the salaries. We accept it to work for the city, for the people here in the city of Freeport. And this don't cover it. So they're well-deserved of this raise.
Thank
if
you
wanna
very
call
much.
it a raise.
We're in agreement with that.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Busker.
I make a motion to move this forward to the regular city council meeting for discussion.
Be next week?
Um,
Is there time to do that by next week, next Monday?
Whatever the next
Yes.
date
That's
is.
the next council meeting. Okay. Is there a
Second.
second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Ross. Any further questions, observations? None, then, not hearing any of those in favor of moving this forward to the next city council meeting next week, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion is carried. Next item, number 10, is not on the agenda. Number 11, discussion regarding agreement for 5G extra fiber strands connecting future U.S. cellular 5G poles, presented by Director Sutman. And this will be in layman's language, please? Yes. Good, thank you.
Hello. Many of you know, US Cellular is building a 5G network in Freeport. The first phase so far is 20 poles. Part of that project is for this company, Unite Private Networks, UMP. They're going to provide the fiber optic cabling to all these sites. Some of it's going to be underground, some of it's going to be aerial, hung on power poles. When they were putting in the permit to build this, we brought up, you know, is there an opportunity for us to expand our fiber network? And through negotiations so far, they've offered 2 strands of fiber. It's basically 2 single fiber optic cables, not a whole bundle, in lieu of a $2,000 permit fee. And that's about where we're at. We don't have anything 100% in place to use this for, but the possibilities are vast. If you have my memo there, you can see some of the ideas that we have for ways they can be used. Future smart cities implementations, hooking up our SCADA systems for water and sewer, just to name a few. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
If I was to discuss this with a neighbor of mine, what would I tell them would be the advantage to Freeport in going ahead with this?
We would have the ability, as the city
Yes.
only, to have basically speed of light internet and network connections between 2 sites. Maybe something right now that uses a radio wave we could transfer and is maybe a little shaky could become a reliable, they call it 5 nines, 99.9999% reliable for the year. We can put it on that communication medium.
Is this a good tool to recruit other businesses to this community?
So this doesn't allow, say, a business along the path on the map you guys all have. They couldn't tie into it. We can't lease these strands to Comcast or another internet provider. They have to be used by the city.
Okay.
So it wouldn't really promote a business in that respect as it would allow us to do what we do better.
More for the city?
Yes.
Chair,
Brush off.
thank you. Is this the map you're speaking of?
Yeah, and I pulled that straight from their permit application. I usually make a new map for you guys. I didn't have time this time. But that shows the route.
So the purple lines are what we're looking at?
Yes, and the solid purple lines are the underground, and then aerial, like a phone line overhead on poles, is the dash line.
Follow up?
Yes.
Yes.
So I see the purple lines go to FHN and Freeport Memorial Hospital. Are they allowed to use that, or is that just for the city services for emergency contact, or?
My understanding is the network capacity needed by the 5G doesn't use the whole 26 or 24 pairs that are in this fiber optic bundle that they're running. But that would be up to this company to lease to an internet provider or to the hospital. It wouldn't be something we can do.
And one more follow-up?
Yes, please.
I see that it says for funding that these 2 strands will be provided in place of a permit fee. Installation of these fiber optic strands will not be an out-of-pocket cost to the city of Freeport. Are they absorbing all cost, or will we have a cost later?
Our costs, so to have, what's gonna happen with this agreement is, as they're running all the cable, it's a big bundle. They're just gonna give us 2 of them. So there's no cost to us other than we're waiving the permit fee. I think I stated in there, if we do wanna hook up a building, we would have to pay to have that fiber optic cable spliced, you know, more cable ran to the building. Those would be costs we'd have, but not, no cost for the cable itself.
That makes much more sense then. Thank you.
Trying to see it, Visual?
So just to dovetail off of what Kurt said, we were forwarded a copy or a draft copy of the agreement from United. I think on Friday they got it to us. I took a look at it this morning. We do need to work through some clarification. Kurt's understanding through his discussions was that they would give us the 2 strands in exchange for us waiving the permit fee that they would otherwise have to pay for them to lay their cable down right now. The agreement's actually not worded that way, or I think it's ambiguous, because I think what they're asking for is that they have a term on this agreement, and it goes till 2040. The only reason why that would make sense for them to have a term in there is because I think they're looking for us to waive our excavation permit. That's what this is. You know, anytime someone needs to dig in our right of way and they're gonna tear up our street or our sidewalks or whatever it is to get to their line, they gotta pull a permit from us and pay this fee. I think that they're saying that till 2040, anytime they need to do work on their optics cable, we're waiving that fee. I don't know if that was unintentional or intentional on their part. It's not the conversation that Kurt had with them, so it's something that we need to clarify. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we're still working on the substance of the agreement.
Yeah,
Sure.
is there a timetable on this that you need this by, or?
No huge rush. They are gonna start putting the fiber in quite soon, within the next month or so, I
Okay.
believe.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Chair,
Mr. McClatchy?
just tighten it up and bring it to us, and, you know, but at the next council, I guess I make a motion that, are you gonna have an answer by the next council meeting?
Hope so.
And, because obviously, if you're dealing with that quick time frame, I just move that we move this on to the next regularly scheduled council meeting, and we'll see what you guys bring us back at that point.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded by McClatchy and Busker. Any further discussions? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion to take this to the next city council meeting next Monday signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, sir. Item number 12, discussion of transportation enhancement program to apply for a city grant to extend the bike trail from Sandy Point Detention Facility to Sullivan Street. Manager Goulas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The pedestrian bike path on Empire Street included a section that connected to Highland Community College from Sullivan Street. This section of the trail is owned by the college. Future plans call for the trail to loop around the college and transverse along the west and north sides of Park Hills Golf Course and connected the trail to the Sandy Point Countryside Detention Facility. The plans call for further extension of this trail to the James Adams Trail at West Block. The original Highland Bike Path connection from Sullivan Street to Sandy Point was estimated at a cost of $2.5 million. The discussion between the city staff and Park District staff is to shorten that expansion of the trail and have it start at Sandy Point Countryside Detention Facility and terminate at Stevenson Street. Our cost estimate is approximately $1 million for this leg of the trail. Funding for the trail would come from the Illinois Department of Transportation Enhancement Program. It's an 80-20% match grant. The $200,000 more or less that would be split between the city and the Park District for the local share, and our local share would come from the motor fuel tax fund. The application is due to IDOT by November 2nd, 2020. Staff's requesting that City Council authorize the city staff to pursue a grant application with the Freeport Park District and commit to funding 50% of the local match. Staff will inform council of the final estimate cost of the application, and we will be back to council probably to approve a resolution as well. And I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Chair.
Yes, Alderman Ross.
Manager Bukes, this doesn't connect with the existing bike trail that they're working on the east side of Freeport, does it?
No, it does not.
Okay. Has there ever been any conversation with connecting those or not?
The long-range plan is, and I'm sorry I didn't look at it before I came in this evening, but the bike trail that we're currently doing on the east side of town, that long-range plan is connected to Pecatonica.
Right.
And that trail does tie into the James Adams Trail. This proposal that we're looking at will basically, at this time, run from Reed Park through Highland and up to Sandy Point, and then from there, you'll continue on north to the James Adams Trail and would meet it at West Block. That's the long-range goal.
Okay,
So eventually, we'll have a looping trail around the entire city.
okay, thank you.
Chair,
Alderman Borneman.
if I understand this right, what we're discussing tonight is the connection of the Sandy Point area, Sandy Point Drive to Stevenson Street?
Correct.
Okay. That's all I have.
Chair,
Yes, Alderman McClellan.
given that this would involve obviously some park district land and then some non-park district land here in the city, what's the idea or framework for maintenance? Are we going to pattern it off of what we've done for the, the Reed Park portion out to Crape Park, or what's the idea on that?
We'll have to decide with the park district how we're going to maintain it, because even though the property or the bike trail and pedestrian path will be alongside the golf course, it will not be on, well, part of it may be on the golf course, but we're looking at getting an easement from the farmers to put it actually on the farmland, just off the property there. And then we'll have to talk to the school district to see if we can get a 20 to 30 foot easement from them as well, because they own some property there.
And that's on part 2, is it the school, or you're talking to the park?
Now, the school district actually owns some land. The Freeport School District 145 owns some land adjacent to the golf course right off of Stevenson.
I see what you're saying.
And that's where we would need to get some property from them or an easement. And then the next phase would be to connect the area from Stevenson around the college and then back to Kiwanis, and then redo the trail from Kiwanis to Sullivan, because that's in pretty bad shape.
Chair,
Yes.
are we primarily looking at conducting these phases through grants such as this, where we can leverage, basically, $4 for one or something of that nature?
That is correct. The grants have been, the amount of the grants been reduced. The maximum grant we can apply for nowadays is $2 million.
Okay.
And so, looking at what's happening with the economy and stuff, we didn't want to be too aggressive.
Understood.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Alderman Busker.
motion to move this forward to the regular council meeting.
Motion is to move it forward to the next regular council meeting. Is that appropriate? That's where we're going to go?
Second.
Okay, second. Alderman, Chairman Zito, you look like you want to say something.
Manager Bucus, is that what you're looking for? Just to have this on, to move forward with the grant? That's all you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
But is there anything that's supposed to be brought to the actual council meeting on?
Nothing for the council meeting not at this time. I just want to make sure that I have your approval to keep working with the park district.
So this motion and the second is to move forward with
The grant process.
Right.
Yeah, if we're able to do that out of this meeting, that's fine, so.
Okay.
So we do have the motion on the floor to move forward with the grant process. Any further questions about that? And thank you for sharing the whole map and loop with us. That's a great opportunity again for Freeport in the area. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Go get your bikes oiled up, guys and gals. Next, we have item number 13, discussion on land reutilization policy. Manager Bucus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The City Council established Chapter 239 of the Codified Ordinances to allow the city manager to dispose of surplus city property with a fair market value of less than $10,000. It is the purpose of this policy that I'm presenting to you tonight to establish a procedure by which unused and marginally used city-owned real property is reviewed for its potential use and for designating unneeded parcels for sale or for lease. Additionally, this policy will provide a way for the sale or leasing of city-owned real property. To kind of review the policy, the City of Freeport is the owner of substantial real property either held either for municipal purposes or as abandoned or vacant real property due to acquisition either by donation or foreclosure. The goals of this policy and the sale of city-owned real property are to encourage reuse and development of vacant properties consistent with the comprehensive plan and any other city accepted plans, eliminate blight and revitalize neighborhoods, strengthen the city's tax base by placing non-essential city-owned property on the tax rolls, convey land through a predictable, timely, and transparent process, encourage timely development and discouraging non-strategic real estate development, and retain as practical those properties deemed to be significant historical or public value. The policy also has a number of questions that have to be asked to determine whether it's surplus or not, and once it meets those criteria, then we can move on with the process. The Community and Economic Development Department will keep an inventory of city-owned property for our review. And the unused or surplus real estate deemed likely by the city manager to be notable value shall be appraised by a professional licensed real estate appraiser to determine its value. And if the city manager determines that the property really has a nominal worth, then there's other ways that we can dispose of this property. In the disposition of property, we could, give it to adjacent or sell it to adjacent property owners. And if one adjacent property owner wants it versus both, then we can convey it to one property owner. We could also offer it to a person behind the property, a homeowners association, a public or not-for-profit entity, and any buyer that is willing to meet the conditions that a single-family residential home be constructed within 18 months on the property if we give or sell them the property or revert back to the city. These sales can be through private negotiation and sale. It can be through advertisement of sealed bids, and we can convey the property to another government entity, or we could look at a lease transfer rather than an outright sale. Proceeds from this disposition of the unused and surplus residentially zoned property will be deposited into the Housing Rehabilitation Fund. A commercially zoned property will deposit into the Revolving Loan Fund and the Capital Improvement Fund for facade improvements. Water and Sewer Department that has surplus property will be put in the Water and Sewer Capital Reserve Funds, and then properties used by any other departments will be put in the General Fund Capital Reserve Fund. Properties that are located in the floodway will not be sold for private residential or commercial use, nor will it be used by any public entity for residential or commercial property. And property disposed under this policy is done so on an as-is basis. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Questions, observation, council?
Chair.
Alderman McClathan.
Thank you. In paragraph 6, where you're dealing with vacant and buildable residentially zoned properties that are of zero or negative value. Priority number 1 is, it talks about adjacent property owners to the left or the right. I'd prefer maybe to see something, and you may have just assumed it when you're operating under it, but I don't see anything that says it has to be adjacent owners in good standing. For instance, owners that don't have any violations of their own or things of that nature. So I would ask that you maybe consider some language to that effect. Under the same paragraph 6, the first bullet point 6, it says any buyer, so the last area of priority would be any buyer under the condition that a single-family residential home be constructed within 18 months so the property would revert to the city. What was the thought process by limiting it to single-family residential homes, and are there any scenarios under which we'd want an exception to that?
That could be looked at on a case-by-case basis, but the purpose of this was that most of the properties that we have or we're going to have are basically single-family, and they're in a single-family zone area.
Chair, can I continue?
Continue.
For paragraph 6, under the second subparagraph, before the bullet points on there, where it says for purposes of economic development, and anywhere in the document that we set out for purposes of economic development, what do we mean by that? And the reason I ask that is because arguably, I think under the first subparagraph, some of that, is economic development. So how are we fleshing out what do we mean by economic development under that subparagraph?
Well, I think what we're looking at is, if you look back at the policy on paragraph 2, policy, the bullet points there, we're talking about how we're going to reuse the property for economic development purposes, following a comprehensive plan, eliminating blight, that's part of economic development, and strengthening our tax base by placing these properties on the tax roll.
So what do you see largely as the differences as to how the first subparagraph under 6 comes into play versus the second subparagraph?
Right. It's trying to take property that's not producing any value right now, or very little value, and put a structure on there that will help the value of that property increase.
All right, so if somebody's actually going to be building something outside of a home, you're giving priority in those other subparagraph, in the second subparagraph, based on the list that you have here, bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yes.
Is that the order of
Right,
priority
that's
for that one?
Basically, some of the lots we have are too small really to build a new single-family home on it, and that's why we talk to the adjacent property owners to see if either one of them wants it, or both of them want it, we'll split it down the middle. If only one wants it, we'll sell it to that one person. And if the adjacent property owners don't want it, then we'll talk to the people behind the lot to see if they're interested in it.
And this is something that you can get back to me on. When I was reading the last paragraph of paragraph 6, it talked about bullet point 5, and
Okay.
just if you could just at our next meeting that when we talk about it, if you could just double check as to which bullet point that actually goes back and references to. I was frankly I was a little confused when I was reading it
Oh, because we only have 4, you're right.
on that one.
I think I eliminated one of them.
Okay.
All right, I will look at the wording on that.
Other questions, council?
Chair.
Alderman Ross.
Yes, Mayor, Mr. Bucus. Can we retouch on the property in the flood zone area again?
Yes. Property that's located in a floodway, no property will be sold for private residential or commercial use, nor will it be used by any public entity for residential or commercial use.
Okay, so none of that property is going to be for sale or for use for anything than what it's being used for right now?
Well, the goal is to make it natural again, bring that property to be its natural floodway. But one thing the reason I kind of worded it that way is that there may be a government agency out there that may manage it for us. Because really, we're not property managers.
Right.
That, during this whole flood mitigation grant process, there was discussion about trying to put in some kind of butterfly habitat and stuff like that. We don't develop butterfly habitats, but there are other organizations in the state that do and know how, that maybe in the future we may want to give it to them to manage. We'll still have to own it, but they'll manage it. And what this is saying is that we're not going to give it to any public entity for residential or commercial use.
Okay.
And we're not going to sell it to anybody, and we're not going to give it to any entity for public or for residential use.
President, but there may be a government agency out there that wants to do something with it.
Well, they're limited what they can do, and what I'm trying to say is that we don't have the expertise to manage grass.
Correct.
Okay, but there are agencies out there that know how to manage grass.
Okay.
So, and I don't want to put them on a spot because I haven't talked to them about it, but the Park District would be a perfect entity to manage this for us because they're managing grass and over a large area, and so they have some expertise. They've got an arborist, they've got other people on their staff that know how the wildflowers should be planted and grow and stuff like that. We don't have that expertise, so we may want to come in agreement with the Park District to manage it for us, but we'll still own it, but somebody else may manage it. as an open space area.
Okay.
Chair,
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Chair.
Yes, Alderman Clem.
Bottom line, on city-owned properties located in a floodway, we will not use it for residential or commercial use, and we will not sell it to any entity for private residential or commercial use.
That's correct.
Council, further questions, observations? Manager Bucus, what is your timeline on this and our disposition this evening?
To move it forward for the next council meeting?
Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Alderman Bradshaw.
Second.
Second, Alderman Ross. Motion is to move this forward to the next council meeting. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? See it next week. Item number 14 is discussion regarding amendments to the financial software contract, removing inventory and work order modules, and adding ExuTime model. Director Richter.
Thank you,
You're
Chairperson
welcome.
Berberet.
You're welcome.
I wanted to bring to council and let you know where I am right now with the financial software that was approved last November. We're moving right ahead. The reason it was purchased was because we wanted to get better reporting capability out of our software, because the software we have right now is kind of dated, and in order to put some reports together, it's a lot of manual labor. But another big reason is because we wanted utility billing to be under the same umbrella, so all of our reports can be run together across all departments. So these last few months have been very busy with configuration. We began pretty intensely, probably back June, July. They assessed our software, what we had now. They started pulling reports and getting data out of it and taking that to their programmers to be able to take it from the old software into the new software. So far, about 5 or 6 of our power user staff have been trained on pretty much all the modules at a power user level in order for us to make decisions on how we want it set up. So our old software, maybe it wasn't working quite the way we wanted it, so we're able to tell the configuration and the programmers how we want it to work in the future. We've also reorganized our chart of accounts. Our account structure has changed. This will allow for further expansion if we add new funds, add new codes, expense codes, that kind of thing. So it'll also give us these better reporting capabilities. So that was quite a process in itself, changing every account code that we have into a new format that will allow better reports to be pulled from the system and more timely. So if we're able to pull better reports, the software is going to do it all by itself, and I'm going to be able to produce those as fast. Well, I won't promise right now, but very fast, much faster than we used to in the old system. But as we have been configuring the new system, you come across things that you know that maybe we didn't need. We found that a module was already being used by another department that was working very good for them, and so we didn't want to duplicate things. So we want to not take the inventory module and the work order module. Work orders are now being handled, and I'm talking about not service orders. Service orders are what utility billing, when you turn on, turn off water. Those are service orders. We're keeping that module. But work orders are more public works activities, repairing a part of road or something like that. But we're finding that those numbers are already being kept in the iWork software that community development uses. So we would like to not take those, which is a cost savings, But we also found out in the payroll module that the module that they have did not keep track of punch-in, punch-out times. It only allowed the employee to go in and say, hey, I worked 8 hours today. But it didn't tell me that they were there from 7:30, took a lunch at noon, and left at 5, which we believe that to be very valuable information. So we asked what product they had. They have this ExecuTime. So this product was shown to all of our department heads on September 2nd. Not only does it accomplish just in-out times, but it will also help us maintain with our union contracts, our bargaining units, some of the little payroll items that are mostly in my head and my junior accountant's head when we process payroll. So things like shift differentials, we'll be able to do that right through ExecuTime. We'll be able to do on-call, which is something like if someone is called in on the weekend, but they only work for an AFSCME employee, they only work 15 minutes or half an hour to do that call, but they truly get paid for 2 hours. So the software is able to have that programmed in, and that's not something that has to be put on a timesheet. Right now, just for your information, all of our timesheets are pretty much Excel-based. All employees are filling out an Excel-based timesheet. So this really moves us forward. Electronic age. There'll be, we haven't made decisions yet on actual time clocks. We'll probably have several methods of the way employees are going to be clocking in. So in addition to that, we looked at the advanced scheduling option with ExecuTime. And this is something that is going to be very valuable for police and fire. And I believe the library was interested in it too, for scheduling shifts, offering new shifts and being able to send that out electronically to those employees eligible and those employees eligible on a certain list when you have to go through a certain procedure when you're opening some spots to be filled. So ExecuTime can take care of that. So in essence, I just wanted to let you know where we stood. I'm hoping, I believe you have a printout of a bunch of numbers of how much it originally cost and what these changes are going to do. I have a net effect of a little bit of a savings, actually, of $4,000. That really comes into play because the employees at Encode are not traveling. So we are not going to, we had an estimated $20,000 in our previous contract for the traveling. We are doing everything go-to-meeting. So we won't have those travel fees, and that really kind of helped factor into that savings. Does anybody have any
Thank you. Questions?
Chair.
Yes, Alderman
Thank you.
Grasha.
Michelle, what I understand here is that we'll have an initial savings of $4,970, but we will have an annual increase for maintenance of $1,978, and that's in perpetuity of this contract, correct?
Yes, that's true. The first year is included, but then once we get through that first year, we will have maintenance fees on the software.
Thank you.
And this contract goes for how long? What was the?
Well, the maintenance, I'm off the top of my head, I'm not sure
Okay.
if we're.
It's 10 years.
It's 10 years.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Eric Mornman? Nope. Alderman McClatchy. Don't argue.
Thanks. This was, from what I recall, you guys spent quite a while in regards to the financial accounting software. It's spanned, well, many individuals working in regards to it. You had a significantly old system, 2 systems that weren't communicating with each other, things of that nature. And at the end of the day, it was expenditures that were just north of $200,000 in regards to this. And you're telling us, as you guys are going down the road here, you're looking to make some tweaks in regards to it. It gives us an initial savings up front that covers about 2 1/3 years of annual cost of the increase that you have on there. So you're making some minor tweaks that has some initial savings and a little additional cost down the road. I mean, if it better fits the needs, we were long overdue for the upgrade anyway, and if it better fits your needs, it's going to make it a more useful tool for you guys in the short and long term, so I don't see any problem with this.
Alderman Bornman?
I was just gonna make a motion to, if it is needed, to move this to the next council meeting.
Since, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
since this is actually a decrease in the cost, we don't have to have an amendment by the city council. So we just want to bring it to your attention that we're proposing it. And if you had any concerns, then we would, we wanted to know and try to answer those.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair?
I appreciate you bringing this forward and letting us know. I mean, you guys use the equipment every day. You're the ones that have to know how it works, what works best for you. So, yeah, just go ahead and do what you need to do to get it done.
Thank you. I have one question, though. Have you had any negative impact by not having travel costs of $20,000 a year, and do you see that savings continuing?
Well, it wouldn't be 20,000, it's just for the implementation of the software.
Implementation, okay, not the operation.
But the comfort level of having a person sitting next to you the first 2 weeks of go live is what I'm missing. They say they're gonna be on the phone with us the whole time. Just as a PS, go live will be for financials the first week of November, and for utility billing, it'll be the last week of November, first week of December.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. Michelle, I want to thank you too for presenting this, and it's good that finally we're going into the 21st century, finally getting into the new accounting software, something that we've talked about for years, many years actually. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 15 on our agenda this evening is discussion regarding Oak Hill, Hillcrest, and that should be Sylvan project funding options. Manager Bukas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn the lead on this over to Director Boyer.
Thank you, Manager. Just to give everyone some background on this particular project, it includes Oak Hill, Sylvan Court, Hillcrest Drive, Oakdale Place, and Lawn Place. There's 56 residences that are currently on septic and leach field in those locations. We have a project in the queue. The estimated cost is going to be around $2.2 million for the entire project. It's about 6,100 feet of 8-inch sewer main. It includes 38 manholes, 13,000 yards of roadway, square yards of roadway, and includes the removal, but not the replacement of that roadway. So that's an additional $300,000 estimated dollars for seal coat once the project is complete. Just bear that in the back of your mind. The depth of the excavation reaches 22 feet in some locations, and there are some other anomalies in the digging area that will need to be considered as we move forward in the process. I have a resident at 1145 Oak Hill, which I believe is approximately in this area. This is an older map. This gentleman currently has a failed leach field, and every time it rains, it comes, hydraulic pressure pushes it back into his basement. He's done everything he can do to mitigate that, including check valves, and there's just no relief. He has to physically vacuum it and pump it and do all kinds of stuff when it's raining. Mr. Elder's been very concerned and is interested in us moving forward on this project. I believe that he's been told in the past that this project would have been underway by now or completed by now. We looked at, did a small analysis to see if we could phase this project in over maybe 2 major phases to lower the initial costs, including getting Mr. Elder and his neighbor approximately in this area. There's another failed leach field there, although he doesn't have the same issues that Mr. Elder has. He needs to be hooked up to a sanitary at some point fairly soon. If we were to phase the project, it would, the estimates come in about $600,000, and it would include 1,500 feet of 8-inch sewer main. 10 service connections, 10 manholes, and 2,500 square yards of road surface. So that's some of the background on this. As far as the budget is concerned, we are, this project's always been locally funded or designed to be locally funded. I believe that was to come out of CIP, but the, prognosticating the cash flow in CIP, it's my opinion there that it would place us under some kind, it would maybe tip the balance of CIP in the wrong direction. Right now, it looks like things are moving smoothly there, and funding looks like it's projecting out rather well. But if we throw or remove another $2 million out of that fund, I'm concerned about the cash flow of that fund. So anyway, moving forward, tonight's discussion is really about how can we do something to do some type of funding maneuver that will enable us to fund or defray the cost of this project to the point where it's lesser impact on CIP or potentially funded through some type of local assessment. So that's the background. Do you have any questions on that?
Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. If you're speaking of, if we break it into phases, and phase 1 was $600,000 for the first 1,500 feet, would that incorporate these 2 residences that are having the failed leach fields?
Yes, yes, but it does reduce some of our, with deployments, we're going to have higher efficiency if we deploy once, and we're going to have more interest in the bid if we do it at once. But if we phased it out, then yes, it would connect. It would essentially be this section all the way down here and to there. That's where the manhole connects to the sanitary main. So yes.
Follow up.
Yes.
The only reason I mentioned the phase is because if you're saying that we don't have the funding mechanism at this time for the 2.2 million, and we have a dire circumstance with the 1 resident, and because they are in the city, they are supposed to be connectable to the city sewer systems. I was looking for us to do the right thing and just looking at maybe doing the phases, but, you know, that's why I was asking those questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
I might add that if you divide the total cost of the project over the number of homes, we're looking at $38,000 per resident. So
Chair.
that, yes.
Chair.
Alderman Ross.
Would the residents out there be responsible for any costs? Or are we hooking them, or would this be hooking, applying city sewer to them, or just taking care of the problem?
Applying city sewer, so.
City
That would be putting in sewer main and connecting all the residents to that sewer main, so adding everyone to the sewer system.
Okay, would they be required to pay any cost to be hooked up to the sewer main?
So the standard hookup fee is about $1,500. I believe another $1,000 is advisable to make it $2,500 for these people in this location.
Each household?
Yes. That comes out to about $140,000. So that is some.
That's for all 50.
That's for all 56.
56
Yes. If we
homes.
phased it out, you'd only have 25,000. So that's kind of the point of bringing it up, is to discuss how best to fund this project, being that there are some residents here that are in dire need to get it done. I want to add a couple more points. Currently, we're getting really good estimates back from, I'm getting positive information from Fairgram that there's a lot of contractors out there looking for work, and this would be a good time to do such a project from a cost-benefit analysis. So there would be some competitive bids. We get a lot of value for our money as compared with past years and projections of future. Also, we'd be eliminating septic tanks that are within the sphere of influence of our water system. So that's a minor positive there. And then as far as the winter months, we're able to do this project during the winter. So that's a potential if we decided to move forward. I did look into having the city crews perform this work. There's two primary reasons why it's not feasible. One is we don't have the equipment, and we really don't have the skill sets currently to do a project of this scope. We're not used to this type of a larger project. So anyway, is there anything else you'd like me to?
Further questions?
Chair? I'm sorry, may I?
Alderman Bradshaw.
Thank you. So the residence share would be approximately $2,500, and that would be from their private residence to the public sewer area, which would be what, in the right-of-way?
Well, normally what happens is when we put it in, we would add a service connection to the property line. So they would just go from wherever their outlet comes out of their home to the connection at the property line.
To the property line?
Yeah.
So if I talk to Mr. Elder or Mr. Shadle again, and they ask me for those amounts, can I give them that rough estimate of the $2,500, or have you already spoke to them
Well,
about
I've
that?
talked to Mr. Elder within the first week of being here, and he asked me what the special assessment would be, and I told him that our normal hookup fee would probably be what would be required, but I wasn't familiar with the project, and I told him that I wasn't familiar enough with the project to say for sure. But yeah, so
That's an estimate then,
as
correct?
an estimate, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
the $2,500 is just their hookup fee that they pay to us. We take the pipe from the sewer line to their property line. It'll still be their responsibility to take it from the house to the property line.
So it's the
And that
$2,500.
$2,500 that they're paying us does not cover that.
Oh,
Thank you for that clarification.
and one more follow-up.
Yes.
What would you estimate then that their other specific costs would be to hook up from that city connection then to into their residence? Because right now they have septic fields, and
Yeah.
so they will have to do something, but I'm not an engineer, I have no idea how this all works.
Well, they'll have to either fill their tank and collapse it, that's part of it, and then they'll have to go from wherever it comes out from their foundation wall to the service connection at the property line. My past experience, you're looking at anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000.
And I went through this experience back in the 1980s, so I can't tell you what it would cost today out in the Parkrest area. But what some of the homes did is the line, the trench to the sewer, which came out from both houses, they shared a ditch and a trench. And so our ways of mitigating some of the costs if people do get together and talk about it as neighbors.
And one more follow-up.
Yes.
And would they actually deal with this crew and pay the crew then, or how would they be billed for these services?
Well, as far as the hookup fee is concerned, they'd just be billed separately. As far as getting connected, they would have to contact a contractor and have the work performed.
Would it be like a plumber, or?
Yep. Well, yeah, plumbers can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Chair.
Alderman Ross.
Okay. With the extra load that we'll be receiving, will we be able to handle it at the sewer plant?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no issue of capacity at the sewer plant.
Could you say that again?
There's no issue with the capacity at the sewer
Okay.
plant.
Alderman Buster.
This might be a question for manager better, but are there any other funding mechanisms that we can use towards this other than what is it, CPI, CIP? CIP, to get this rolling?
The only
Or
other
grant
alternative would be to apply for a Illinois Environmental Protection Agency loan, low interest loan. I believe would probably delay the project by about a year to do that.
If I might add a point of clarification on that was discussed, potentially adding this project to the Phase 1 facility plan for the sewer plant that's coming up, and it would add 2 years to the start of construction.
Okay, so, follow up?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess, I'm just trying to figure out, talking about wanting to do something, if we can get a better cost doing it all at once instead of in phases. I mean, it's gonna save us money in the long run, but how do we get there? What other options are do we have any other options?
We have some limited choices. I'd say if you're interested in helping Mr. Elder and beginning the project, we're going to end up spending more than 2.2 million if we phase it out. I don't know exactly how much more, but it will be more. So just bearing that in mind. Yeah. So yes, I mean we've essentially talked about special service district if we're going to do something like that to help at least. Maybe we could do the project out of CIP, but then assess a special service fee. That might be a way of reimbursing the CIP. You know, that's one potential option. Manager Bookus might have some other thoughts on that.
That's something to keep in mind, that when a new sewer goes in, this is going to increase the value of those homes.
Oh, yeah.
And we're like Director Boyer mentioned, you know, we're looking at about $38,000 per household. That you know, if you take it over 15 years, you're adding probably about $2,800 to their annual tax bill. But part of that project too, we would have to pay for because part of it's going through an area that is not being serviced by anybody, and that would be our cost. So we would have to look at those figures, those numbers, and see what it might be on the average house out there, because we would probably do it on a per lot basis versus a front foot basis. Again, we could also look at trying to include this with our wastewater plant, but then we're looking at 2 years. We could try to start looking at a loan for $2.2 million. But there again, we should have some type of along with the connection fee, some kind of assessment as well, just to help offset the interest costs of nothing else on what's taking place out there, because we are adding value to those homes out there. They were built without sewer, and now we're putting sewer in for them.
Chair?
Yes, Alderman.
Thank you. I can't seem to pull it up, but I seem to recall that wasn't Oak Hill and Hillcrest and Sylvan, they were part of our 5 or 7 year capital plan, weren't they?
And this is part of it, yes.
Yep.
Right, and then this is a portion of it, and we were planning on paying, I assume we were planning on paying through capital improvement of funds as it went through there. When was this initially what year was this initially supposed to hit on the capital plan?
I don't have that information off the top of my head.
It was this year.
Okay.
Okay, so we were planning on it on this year.
Yes.
I mean,
Well,
what's changed?
we were too aggressive in our plan.
Okay,
We have a lot of items in our capital plan, improvement plan, that we just can't do because we don't have the funds for it. But we got so much work to do. You can only take each priority at a time.
I guess where I'm going with that is I fully appreciate, because I mean the plan when it was put in place with the rate increases that were put in place over 3 years, it was understood that it was kind of a 40-year window for everything. So yeah, we can't do everything up front. I understand that. In that same light, I do hesitate with, since those increases were put in place with the idea they would cover projects like this, I hesitate to impose a specific additional fee on top of it, on an assessment but I guess what you're asking for us is, how do we want to prioritize this? Do we want to keep this project on its current schedule? Because those capital improvement fees are obviously coming in, on a monthly basis. What are the other projects that we would have to exchange? I mean, if we do this one now, what are we not doing right now, so we can make an analysis there?
I'd be happy to comment on that. Okay, all of our plans we have in place right now, we have the Adams Street project, the Chicago project. We've also got the facility plan for the wastewater plant. We've got current loans and bonds, which we're paying on, and all that money is coming from CIP. When I do a cash flow analysis on what's coming in versus what's going out, we have to maintain a minimum balance as far as the EPA is concerned, so that we remain in a solvent enterprise, so that they will give us potentially future loans, okay? So, to maintain that minimum balance, to take 2 million out right now, it's possible to do, but will we have the cash flow to make that 2 million up and have the minimum balance in the CIP for future EPA loans and.
When we hit Adams and everything next year.
Right, we've got a pretty steep ramp up in terms of funds going out in the next few years, kind of coming to a peak in 2024. And I'm interested in making sure that capital improvement fund is rock solid for the next 20 years, which is the term of most of those payments.
I appreciate that, and that's what I was inartfully trying to get to, is what are we, if we do this and prioritize this right now as it is, what are we potentially sacrificing? And in the short term, it would be doing Adams on the timeline that we're looking to do. We're doing some of the Chicago that we're on the timeline that we're looking to do.
I don't think we're going to sacrifice those. It's just we're potentially putting the cash flow for the CIP at risk in maybe 6 or more years out.
Which we can't, I mean, you wouldn't recommend we do.
I like to be as sustainable as I can.
Exactly.
So if I'm projecting that we're doing significantly better next year, and I think we're in a solid financial position to weather that out indefinitely to the end of those terms, I would advise move forward right now. I'm not sure of that, and what I'm seeing right now is I wanted to be a little more cautious and a little more conservative with our outlay. So if we outlay 2.2 million, that's roughly, I'd say, that's a third of what's in CIP currently, and that would take our balance down to a point where it would take a while to build that back up, hopefully in time before all those other payments start to kick in 2024 and 25.
Chair?
Yes.
Is this something that we can present, present to basically the neighborhood as a whole as to how they want to proceed in it? Because, I mean, obviously, if they want, just say, we want this now, we want to do a special assessment now in regards to it, that's above and beyond. Otherwise, what's your estimated time frame of looking at the cash flow and everything that you talked about in regards to that? What's the estimated time frame that this project would be delayed if we were trying to get to a period of time where you were comfortable with the cash flow
Well,
and
I'd
the other
say
projects?
it would be at minimum a year.
A year from now?
I want to make sure that the revenues that are expected to come in for CIP materialize. So, and we're doing that analysis now, and then we're looking at the numbers that are coming in for this year. But I want to make sure that we're not seeing a gradual decline in revenue on CIP due to less services. And then where those lines intersect with expenses going out, where does that fall? What year does that fall? And if it does at all, ideally, I want to see those lines not intersect.
Okay.
But I'm not at a place where I can say that we could take 2 million out of CIP right now and then find out, in 2024, 25, that we're going to have to, look at another increase to make up the difference.
Right. Follow-up, Chair?
Yes.
I mean, I guess I follow council members, I guess, where are you at in regards to this, in light of we set out basically a 40-year time frame under a new rate structure, and we've been planning projects as we are. We've adjusted projects every year since that's been in place. We've put some projects that had to come up to the front of the road or front of the line, and then we've also put some back and delayed them here. I don't think we've ever considered doing, at least at on the floor level, I don't think we've ever considered doing an additional increase or special assessment for any of these projects. We've just kind of shuffled them as they've approached. What are your thoughts and what's the appetite?
Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Arlen.
Manager, can you explain what a special assessment would look like to one of these 56 or all these 56 homeowners?
Basically, it's a charge that's placed on the property as part of property tax that we're looking at $2,800 for 15 years. They would be paying their normal property tax, plus they'd have another charge of $2,800 on their property bill to pay for that.
Now, can I follow up?
Yes.
Then in addition to that, they'd still have to pay looks like it's going to be close to $5,000 in installation and connecting fees, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then I have a question for the director. Do you have a recommendation for how this, you would move forward on this, or advise a client to move forward on this?
I'm kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. This is a difficult decision because the nature of the project is difficult. There's really no easy way. You don't have a majority of people over there with failing septics, as far as we know. We have one gentleman that's got an acute problem, possibly two, and my opinion is I find it very difficult to justify the $600,000 phased-in approach for 2 service hookups or 10 service hookups. But it really comes down to the fact that they're in the city. But yeah, I would say the phased approach would probably be the prudent one until the rest of, or we start seeing more failures in septic. At least we can get a footprint down there, keep our initial impact cost of installation to a minimum, helping to preserve the CIP for all the future planned projects. And then, yeah, so my recommendation is a phased approach, although it's a fine line. It's a very fine line.
Question, again, based on my personal experience back in the last century. When the sewer came in, each residence was given a prorated cost of a project. They broke the big project and the 4 project, and they just civil did it all. But we did not have to, we had to pay for the hookup, but we didn't have to actually hook up through our plumber until our septic failed. Would that be the case here too? So they wouldn't have to pay for that trenching work and plumbing work?
That's correct.
Okay, until that time. So that would
agree with
delay that cost, because you said there's only 10 failed?
Well, no, this would be 10 on the first phase, so that would be
Okay.
10 of hookups that we could physically do
Okay.
of the 56. There's only 2 that are failed or in some, falling apart some way.
So the others could wait to hook up, really?
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Other-
following,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, following that line of thought, we could do the first phase, and those that hook up, and not do the second phase until we start seeing a failure system throughout that subdivision. So it could delay for a couple of years even. But we don't know what the situation is out there, because people won't tell you that their systems are failing until they're backing up into their house.
Right.
Mr.
Chair.
Chair.
Yes, Alderman Ross.
Manager, what would be the first, or director, what would be the first phase?
So
And how many people would that affect?
Well, it would affect 10 people, and it would start at approximately here, and then it would go down to the end of Oak Hill, and then across into the manhole there. Now, if you see on this whole thing, we've got this plan incorporates Sylvan Court, all of Oak Hill, goes down here and around. So those 56 hookups we talked about are all of these. The 10 that we would be able to affect immediately with the phased approach would be these 10 right here.
Follow up?
Yes.
But would that keep us on track for everything else we're doing?
It would be less of an impact. Yes, I don't know, I can't answer that for sure, but it would be much less of an impact and would solve an acute problem over here at Oak Hill.
Because we spoke about the Adams Street, Chicago, but as I just stated, would that keep us, I had to ask that again, keep us on track for that or not?
I expect it would not negatively impact things to a substantial point that we couldn't recover in the next year or two.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't say for sure. We're in the middle of the budget planning process, and I'm not done with the CIP planning yet.
So if we delayed until we saw the budget and your planning, that would delay, but would it affect the favorable bidding climate also by things delaying it?
I can't speak to
Okay,
that, I don't know.
Chair,
Yes, Alderman.
thanks. And I appreciate you don't lack for work, and, and you've been trying to balance the funding in regards to these issues, in regards to that, and it's a process and an issue that far preceded, you're entering this position. Looking at the scope of work, I think just at our last meeting or so, we were talking about how there's going to be potentially some road work also too. And I know you're trying to maximize efficiencies by not doing road work somewhere that you're going to come and tear it up in the near future. How would a phased approach impact any road work you were planning to do back there?
It would not. That area, the phased approach, that road is in relatively good condition.
Okay, it's the other portions back there, Demeter's,
Right.
portions of Sylvan, maybe.
Right.
Okay.
It's all this area in here that's really falling apart.
Okay.
So I think I might guess where you're going with that, and yes, it might, if we did the whole project at once, we would, but this 2.2 million does not cover the estimated seal coat that was planned for this project. That would be an extra 300,000 to do the road. So 2.5 million is really, and that's with seal coat. After the experience we had with Woodside Drive, I'm not sure how excited anyone is about doing seal coat down there, but.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because when you said seal coat about 15 minutes ago, that was the first thing I thought of in regards to that, but then we hadn't even gotten to that point yet.
Right.
I think you're right.
Woodside Drive was supposed to be the
Test subject
the
there.
test subject, and I don't think anybody came away feeling good about it.
Understood. So if I understood your response to, I forget which alderperson it was, it's got a lot of negatives to it, but if you had to be forced to do one, you'd say probably the 600,000 phase balances all of the competing interests the best at this time, recognizing that one of the drawbacks to it is doing it piecemeal will cost more over the long term, but we just don't have the funding to approach it all at once. Is that an accurate summary?
It is very accurate, although I'll say one thing. The balance may exist today to do it all, but in looking into the future, how will that impact where we should be in the capital improvement fund? And I don't want to jeopardize the sustainability of that and then have to come back for an increase in 2025, 26.
I appreciate that.
But that's really that's really your decision to make.
Right.
Do we need additional information, more presentation, more analysis? Manager Bucus, which way do you think we should go, council?
As Director Boyer mentioned, we're working on the budget right now. We'll continue to work on it. We'll see how we can or cannot put part of this in there, how it may play out. But the reason I brought up the special assessments because I wanted you to think about other funding sources that we may, have to go to. The tap fee of, $2,500 is not enough, but it's better than nothing. We do have a couple of people that are experiencing problems right now, and when you look at it for two people, spending $600,000, that's a lot of money. But I do feel for them. I know what they're going through. But we have to see what the future looks like. And as I said, we were pretty aggressive in our capital plan for the last couple of years, and we need to take a look at it again, and that's what we're doing now, to see what's really reasonable versus what we're taking in. With this COVID, our revenues did drop a little bit in water and sewer. We have to see how they're going to bounce back now and see what we could do. We may miss this winter's construction, but we could always try to do something in the spring as long as the contractors aren't too busy yet. So we'll be back to you. Unless council has other ideas, and we're more than welcome to listen to them.
Well, certainly it sounds like we want to help these several individuals, but eventually everybody.
Right.
So, I think.
Chair,
Yes.
Is there a way for the first phase to be larger? Would that make costs, phasing it out, would that reduce the price of phasing it out? And why, obviously you've thought of this, and I'm wondering why it's not a larger phase.
Well, it could be, the discussion was to do all of Oak Hill, so that would be this entire section here, and then back to our manhole here. That estimate came in at around $800,000. I don't have the details on it in front of me, but it would effectively double the seal coat, so that would be another safely $70,000 or $80,000 worth of road finish.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And how many residents would that serve if you did, just roughly?
I don't know off the top of my, I didn't get that
Okay.
information for the meeting.
Sure.
Manager Bucus I know we're not in the banking business, but this is the type of thing that individuals might like to spread this cost over a number of years through financing. Is the city in any way able to work with local community banks to help show the advantage of the community to the bank as they might be interested in loaning money at a good rate today to those people?
Well, that's what we're actually doing. We're serving as a bank if we do a special assessment on it.
Well, true.
Because we're letting them pay it back over 15 years. So we're actually, we got to come up with the money, but then we got to be able to get the money to pay that, our costs back.
Okay.
Essentially, it would be borrowing money from CIP that is paid back through
All
the
right.
special assessment.
Chair,
Thank you. Yes.
the two residents involved are both aware that there will be some costs. I was kind of digging for exact costs because they are in my ward. And I've dealt with many complaints with both of them over several years. And each year it's maybe next year. And that's why when it's in the capital improvement plan, they thought it should have been started by now.
It was in the capital plan. But looking at that with fresh eyes, I want to make sure that everything is going to be sustainable going forward, and we don't have to look at a citywide increase, but there again, or, in off years, and then, so, but at the end of the day, that's your call, so.
Would you like some further discussion at the next committee of the whole or at the next council meeting to keep this moving forward for situation?
We could put on next committee of the whole meeting.
Okay. Council in agreement with that? Okay.
Yeah, I'll make that motion if that's needed.
Yes, let's do that. Second by Alderman Busker. Any further discussion? Motion is to move this forward to the next, further discussion to the next committee of the whole meeting. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried.
Chair, I'm sorry, I missed the motion and the second.
Ornament and Buskins.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you all. Brings us to item number 16, public comments. Do we have any public comments this evening? There appear to be no public comments. Would like to thank Manager Bucus and his team for all the hard work they have put in. This was a rather interesting committee of the whole with lots and lots and lots of discussion, but it was very effective in moving our community forward. I'll take a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved. Second.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.